Hi, I'm Elise and welcome to Witch Way. Today I'll be taking you through some witch trial memorials of Scotland in the real world witch lore of the series, A Kind of Spark. This series is based off of the book of the same name by Elle McNichol, and in 2023 it was adapted to a series starring Lola Blue as Adie Darrow, Georgia de Gidlow as Keedy Darrow, Eve Midgley as Audrey Gladstone, Kate Hamilton as Nina Darrow, Hattie Gotobed as Maggie Fraser, Ella Maidsley Purvis as Eleanor, Amy Marston as Miss Murphy, and many more. The series follows young Adie, who learns about the witch trials that happened in her town and is given the centuries-old diary of Lady Margaret Fraser, aka Maggie, a young woman accused of witchcraft. But after that, nobody knows what happened to her. Adie needs to find out everything about the witch trials, and she discovers that many were accused of witchcraft in the village of Juniper, and suspects that most of those accused of witchcraft might just have been different. Some might just have been autistic, like her. Adie soon realizes that not much has changed in Juniper and wants to expose and acknowledge Juniper's dark past and its current prejudices, so proposes a memorial to the victims of the witch trials, but not everyone is happy about it. The flashbacks in the series take us back to Juniper in 1597, when a witchfinder comes to town and witch trials start taking place. Witchfinders weren't really active until the mid-1600s, but the beliefs they held to were much older than that.
The witch's mark, made by the devil himself.
Get off me!
It was indeed believed that after a witch made a pact with the devil, a mark would be left on their body as a result of this. In the novel, Juniper is a Scottish village, and in the year 1597, there was indeed one of the great Scottish witch hunts. This one swept the country from March to October of that year. Also published that year was the book condemning witches, Demonology, written by King James I, who himself was involved in the first of the great Scottish witch hunts in 1590, the North Berwick witch trials.
So, the problem was James I, King of Scotland, then of England.
He was totally paranoid about witches, and his fear kind of filtered down to everyday folk.
Demonology and the events at the North Berwick witch trials were said to have inspired the characters of the three witches in Shakespeare's Macbeth, and Adie even gets a chance at portraying one of these witches in her school play. This fear of witches, though, reinforced by King James's involvement, led people to taking some countermeasures to witchcraft in the form of witch bottles or witch jars that we do see in the show. The jars would be filled with the afflicted's urine, hair, and nail clippings, along with nails, pins, and other sharp objects, and then buried. This would apparently counter the malicious spell put on them by evil witches. Unfortunately, other ways to combat witches was to accuse people of the practice, which in turn led the accused to blame others, often under torture. The height of this panic was between the 14th and 17th centuries, and after the panic died down and reality set in, thousands of people had been put to death, being found guilty of the crime of witchcraft, or even dying while imprisoned in horrific conditions while awaiting their trial. Many countries realized their dark past and named the witches for what they were: victims. This is what Adie is trying to do, make a memorial to these victims. So let's look into some real world witch trial memorials in Scotland. I even heard a name in this series that makes a nod to one of these victims.
Lily and Adie.
This name is very similar to Lilias Adie, In 1704, Lilias Adie was accused of witchcraft and imprisoned. She, however, died before she could be brought to trial, and so was buried between the high and low tides of Torreyburn Bay, a large stone slab marking the site of her resting place. This represented the fear that the accused witch may be brought back by the devil to torment the living. Her remains, however, were dug up by curio hunters, sold, exhibited, and then misplaced. The stone marker, however, can still be seen today, and a plaque overlooks her former grave and reads, "They feared she would rise from the dead. How could she, as she was an ordinary woman accused?" This marker is one of a set of 3 plaques in the Fife Witches Trail, the others being located in Valleyfield and Culross to commemorate the 380 accused witches in the Fife region between the 16th and 18th centuries. In Scotland, after being found guilty of witchcraft, people were strangled to death and then their bodies were burnt. East Lothian has a sculpture to commemorate some of these victims of the witch trials. This beautiful piece commemorates 81 people who were executed for witchcraft in the 16th century in the area, including the victims of the aforementioned North Berwick trials. Some of the accused in the North Berwick trials were tried and executed at nearby Edinburgh Castle, and an estimated 300 victims of the witch trials were said to have met their fate here. For this, there is a fountain erected at Edinburgh Castle to commemorate these victims, a fountain known as the Witch's Well. This is also mentioned in the novel A Kind of Spark as blaming the victims, and it does romanticize the witch trials, stating the duality of witches, that some used their exceptional knowledge for evil purposes, while others were misunderstood and wished their kind nothing but good. This just seems to, though, reinforce that there were actually evil witches out there. Another well stands as a grisly reminder of the Scottish witch panic. In 1696, 7 people were found guilty of witchcraft. 6 were killed at Gallow Green, the site where the well now stands. Understandably, before her death, Agnes Naismith called down a dying woman's curse on the people of Paisley. After the victims' bodies were burned, their ashes were buried at a crossroads and a horseshoe placed over them to hold the curse at bay. Many local misfortunes were blamed on this curse, and the original horseshoe did go missing. A new horseshoe memorial was placed on the crossroads in 2008 and reads, "Pain inflicted, suffering endured, injustice done." The Witch's Maze in Crook of Devon commemorates the 11 people executed for witchcraft in the settlement in 1662. 13 were accused. 1 of the accused died before being sentenced, and another pardoned due to pregnancy. But over 5 trials, the 11 others were found guilty and sentenced to death. The names of these victims are etched on a pillar at the heart of the maze. As part of the Dundee Women's Walk, between 2 mosaics lies a marker to the last woman burned for the crime of witchcraft in Dundee. The name on this marker is Grisel Jaffray, Spaewife. This was a term used for a woman who could predict the future. Other than the guilty outcome of her witch trial though, and that she was strangled and burned in 1669, not much else is known about what led to her accusation and execution. Another mosaic stands as tribute to accused witches in Aberdeen, which saw a spike in witch trials in 1597 as part of the Great Witch Panic. The mosaic includes the names of some of the victims of the trials, woodcuts of supposed witches from the era, and also modern symbols used by those of who have reclaimed the title witch. Orkney also has a memorial to those accused and executed in the local area. 19 people were accused, 9 of whom were sentenced to death. The memorial is located on the site where these victims lost their lives, on Gallow Hill in Kirkwall, and states they were just folk. A memorial in Forfar makes a similar statement, a stone with markings numbering the victims of the witch hunts in Forfar between 1661 and 1662, and it states simply Forfar witches, just people. One of the largest witch trial monuments stands about 6 meters high in the small village of Dunning and states Maggie Wall, burned here 1657 as a witch, though no records have been found to suggest this person ever existed. Very mysterious. Several what are known as witches' stones also stand across the country to commemorate significant events and people involved in the witch trials in Bo'ness, Spot, Monsey, Ferress, and most notably, Dornage, as this last stone is said to mark the spot of the last victim legally burned for witchcraft in Scotland. Janet Horn was executed in 1727 after being found guilty of witchcraft. The stone marking her death incorrectly states 1722. All of these trials took place due to the Scottish Witchcraft Act of 1563, which made the practice of witchcraft and consulting with witches a capital offence punishable by death. And it's believed over 4,000 people were accused of witchcraft in Scotland between the 16th and 18th centuries before the Act was repealed in 1735. In 2022, a formal apology was issued by the Scottish First Minister for the people accused of witchcraft. This is one step in the right direction for those who were campaigning for not only an apology, but a posthumous pardon for the accused, as well as a national memorial to all of the victims of the witch trials in Scotland. You can find more about this campaign at Witches of Scotland, and I'll be sure to link it below. But did Adie succeed in memorialising the witch trial victims in her area? You will have to watch A Kind of Spark to find out, or read the novel it's based on. The series scores for lore and history and is absolutely gorgeous show. I highly recommend giving it a watch. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below, as well as what you've been watching, reading, or listening to lately, or some recommendations for my upcoming witch lore reviews. I've had some great ones come through so far. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up or share it around. And as always, thank you very much for watching here on Witch Way.